Ladies and gentlemen, joining me on the line, and I'm going to take a running start at the last name because I messed it up the last time we talked. Jeff Belanger is on the line. Did I get it?
Nailed it.
Oh, yeah. At
Well
least
done.
once in this interview, I'll get it right. So,
Perfect.
ladies and gentlemen, Jeff is on the line with me right now. You may remember Jeff. He was on the show with me maybe about a year or two ago. You joined us to talk about shock docs. The Devil Made Me Do It.
Oh, right. Yeah. For Discovery. Sure.
Yeah. Was that a cool deal to do that stuff?
Yeah. I did 7 of the shock docs, on different stories. This is my whole life. I'm always looking into haunts and weird, creepy stories all over the world. And so when you get to sort of tell one of those tales and comment on it, it's a pretty interesting thing. It's about one day of filming for me,
Yeah.
and then they do what they do, and then out it comes, and everybody remembers it. And you're like, wow, I worked for years and years on other stuff, and no one wants to talk about it.
Well,
But it's you're on TV, and you're like, wow. But those stories captivate us, right? Because they get made into movies, they get part of our popular culture, but they all started somewhere, like
yeah.
with a real story, whether it was a real crime or a real haunting, and evolved from there.
On your website, you've got exploring the unexplained as kind of the overall message with this. Tell us a little bit about you because you're an author. You do the TV and movie stuff. You do you get into the paranormal research? Just what's your whole deal with the paranormal and the world of the weird?
Yeah, so I grew up in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, and that was the town next to Monroe, Connecticut. Still is the town next to Monroe, Connecticut.
It
And
moved?
they didn't move it; it's still there. And Ed and Lorraine Warren are from Monroe, Connecticut. So
Okay.
from all the Conjuring movies and so on, I knew them since I was 13 years old.
No way,
And
really.
so I grew up around that. But back then, they didn't have movie deals back then. They were just regional weirdo celebrities, that would come around in October and tell us about haunted places. So I would go see that stuff, and I grew up with friends that said their houses were haunted, and I went to school to be a writer and started writing feature stories about haunts and history, and then started a website, and then started writing books, and then started working for the show Ghost Adventures on Travel Channel, and I've worked on every episode since the first one 15 years ago. And it's just one of these things where I have this career that I never could have planned,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't trade it for anything. And so once you start doing this stuff, like this is everything that I do. And so I'm always looking into weird legends and lore all over. And then I started my own podcast, New England Legends, where we just look at weird stories in the northeastern U.S. And it's such an awesome way to not only make a living, but also to see different cultures and get below the surface, because people only share those stories with folks they trust.
Well,
You know.
that was why I wanted to ask because I've interviewed a lot of people in the paranormal world, or they're just an author that likes to write about it or to do the true crime. So it's always kind of neat to see. Okay, where do you actually sit with this stuff?
I'm a believer. Let there be no doubt. I mean, I don't just write about it. I want to go there. I want to see it. I want to experience it. I mean, I've been in medieval castles and old prisons and abandoned hospitals. I've been in quarantine asylums in Australia and castles and battlefields, and I want to go. And I don't consider myself psychic or sensitive or anything like that. I've always said, like, I don't know where the ghosts are, but I absolutely know where they were. And so who knows? And once in a while, once in a blue moon, something weird happens, and I look and I go, you know what? I don't have another word for that. If not a ghost, I don't know what else it is that I just saw. And that's a pretty profound moment when it happens for you.
See, that's interesting because, like, I've talked about that with my wife, who she doesn't believe in any of this stuff,
Hmm.
nothing. But she's never had an experience that she can't explain.
Well, really? Because you know what's funny? There's so many things in our lives that we can't explain. For example, love. You can't put love in a jar and say this is how much I love my wife or my
Hmm.
child, or how much I love chicken wings or football or whatever, right? You can't put humor. What you find funny, I may not, and vice versa. Pain, physical pain. If I stick a needle in your arm, most
Yeah.
people would look and say, "Oh, I bet that hurts." But how much does it hurt? Some people have a high tolerance. Some people have a low tolerance. So there's all these human experiences that we all know exist, because hopefully we've experienced love and anger and humor and pain and all that stuff, but we can't measure it or put it in a jar or prove that it's real to anybody else. But we all know it's there. And so I think sometimes, though this is on the fringe, it touches on something really primal that's in all of us. And you don't have to believe in an afterlife. Or you could be an atheist, but there's still some sense that we do go on. We still talk about people who have deceased, whether it's grandparents, relatives, artists, politicians, whoever. We carry those stories forward, and we carry their essence with us too.
It's a really, really interesting world, and that's a great way to sum it up.
Yeah, I mean, the story itself still has value. The reason something haunts us is because we can't let it go.
Yeah.
And it's not just me or you. I mean, this is a whole community that keeps these stories alive. Like, why do we talk about this one building being haunted and that one we don't? It's because something weird's happening, and folks are telling the story, and we find it believable enough that we also tell it, and maybe we even go there.
What was the first story or the first experience for you that was like, okay, there's something to this stuff?
I had been writing about ghosts for about 6 years before I had my first experience, and it was in 2003. It was 20 years ago, and I was in Paris, France, and I was down below the city in the catacombs, surrounded by millions of human skeletons, and I was alone. No one would go with me. So I'm down there, and I'm walking through these skeletons, and I see this long straightaway ahead of me, and this shadow the size of a man comes from the right side and goes to the left and back again. And I just went, okay, wait a minute. I'm down here alone. There's no one around. And then I thought, oh, maybe there's a little side tunnel, and I missed somebody. Nope, no side tunnel. It was straight all the way. And I just thought, if that's not a ghost, I don't know what other word I can give you for it. I mean, it took days, it took weeks to fully sink in. And I went back a few years later, and I went to that same section. And this time I did have someone with me, and I was like, okay, I'm back here. Come on out.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Nothing. Lightning doesn't always strike twice.
And why were you down there in the first place?
Because I had a day to myself in Paris, and I wanted to write about it. And I knew that was like the creepiest place I could go. Some other people were like, oh, we're going to the Louvre. I'm like, I'll catch up with you. And so I went down below the city, and it was amazing. I mean, I don't know. You can see the stuff that all the tourists see, which is fine. I get it. And I did eventually see the Mona Lisa. Okay, right? Check, right? But I also went below the city into the underbelly, where there's just literally millions of skeletons.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah,
there's Jeff just pulling up the manhole cover going on.
I don't get another. You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't even occur to me to go see what everybody else sees when I go anywhere, right? Not just Paris, but like any town, anywhere. I'm just like, okay, cool, yeah, that's the famous architecture or whatever. But where's the weird stuff? Show me that.
So it's always been kind of up your alley, then, is what
always.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Always, yeah.
Do you have a favorite more than other? Like, is it ghosts for you? Is that your flavor? Is it, aliens, Bigfoot? What's kind of the one that really resonates with you?
It was ghosts first, always, and from there. But then once you start going down the rabbit hole, like, why go halfway? You know what I mean? You just go.
Yeah, but I think everybody has stuff that, like, the cryptozoology stuff doesn't do it as much for me. I mean, it's not that I don't think it's interesting or whatever, but would I rather hear a ghost story? Yeah, that's me.
Well, right, because it's literally human, as opposed to crypto, which is zoology, which is animal. I mean, It could be, right, like, okay, maybe you don't care about aardvarks either.
No, I don't.
Yeah, right. And you didn't strike me as an aardvark kind of guy, so I get it. So yeah, definitely ghosts, but I think all of it's interesting when we see something that doesn't compute, right? So when hunters, and the story is so similar. I'm in a tree stand. I've hunted these woods for 20 years. I know every animal. I've seen skunks and deer and everything else. And this 8-foot tall hairy creature walks by and then just is gone through the woods. And you look at that and you go, well, either this person's crazy and making up a story, which for what, right? What do you get out of that? Or they just are scratching their head going, the world is different than I thought it was this morning. And I love any story that can make us say that. When you see a UFO, when you see lights in the sky, and you go, okay, yeah, when our military goes on national news shows and says, yeah, you see that craft that I filmed in my F-16? We don't have anything that can do that. Can you grasp what stage we're at?
Yeah.
You're charged, right? When the government allows that pilot to go on a national news show, allows and says, yeah, go ahead and tell everyone it's not ours, and it does stuff that we can't do. That's really something.
See, I've been diving into this stuff for long enough that I see that and I go, what are they not showing us?
Oh, right. Can you imagine? Yeah. Can you imagine? I remember in the Gulf War when, in the 80s, everybody was seeing these black triangles in the sky and saying, oh, they're UFOs, they're UFOs. You probably were seeing black triangles. It was called the stealth bomber.
Yeah.
But it was classified. And then during the Gulf War, I remember Norman Schwarzkopf in a press conference, they got one. They were able to shoot a stealth bomber out of the sky. And one of the reporters said, hey, are you worried that this technology is falling into enemy hands? And he just scoffs. He's like, "Pfft, that's 30-year-old tech." And he's right. He's not kidding. He's not even a lie. It's totally true. And I remember thinking and laughing and going, "Oh my gosh, what do we have now?"
Yeah.
Right?
No, totally. Because I always think that about, you think about, a nuclear bomb. That's almost 100-year-old technology at this point.
That's right.
It's
Yeah,
80, about 80, or whatever it is. But
yeah.
a century later, what are we doing?
Oh, who could? You can't even imagine, right? And so I wonder. The reality is we don't have all the answers.
No.
And when you talk about paranormal, you get to talk about what happens after we die without talking about religion, because religion divides us and it makes us fight and we argue. And when you talk about UFOs, are we alone in the universe? And what does that mean? And when we talk about cryptids, you're saying, do we know every creature that walks the earth with us and why? And we don't. We don't have all the answers. And that makes some people nuts. Some people need to think that everything is black and white and we have all the answers. And folks like me, I'm pretty comfortable with gray area. I'm great with it. I like that we can still ask questions and still look for answers, that we don't know everything.
I love that you're into the world of the weird. I really am.
You know what else I love, which doesn't get enough ink anywhere, is like roadside oddities. When someone puts something really strange up somewhere, just for the sake, like I live in Massachusetts. There's this fork in the road, and years ago, this sculptor built a 15-foot tall fork.
Really?
And in the summer, a hot dog will be on it in July, and in the winter,
That's
a wreath
funny.
will be on it. I'm like, I love that someone just saw this thing and did it, and if that stays there long enough, I mean, imagine if that fork were to survive for like hundreds of years. People would think it was a sacred site and that we prayed to it. You know what I mean?
No, I get it, because that just happened not too long ago in my hometown, Polk City, Iowa, just small town in central Iowa. But there was a tree, and I can't remember if it was struck by lightning. I think it was struck by lightning, but the kind of discoloration on the side of it from a distance vaguely looked like the Virgin Mary.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And so people started putting, candles and, flowers and, that sort of thing around it. And so I totally get that.
Yeah,
totally get that.
Because we need to find meaning in chaos, right? A lightning strike is literally as chaotic and random as a thing as you can get, and then it leaves something behind, and you look and you say, "Oh, it could be, that's Mary. It's a sign, literally a sign from God." And then it just takes a couple people to light a candle, and off we go.
Jeff Belanger on the line with me right now as we talk about the world of the weird. Among all the things you are, Jeff, an author is one of those. How do you grab the topics? How do you get into the subjects you write about?
So for me, writing books is incredibly labor intensive. It takes a long time, and it pays really poorly. So I can't recommend enough. If you're an aspiring author, get into anything else. But I
funny sounds like radio.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've got enough friends in radio. Absolutely, you do it because you love it, and if you don't, because you're not making much money at it. But it's one of those things where for me it's like an exorcism. So I have an idea, and I don't really write ideas down because if I forget them in a day or two, they probably weren't that good.
Yeah.
But if they keep gnawing at me, eventually I go, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to work on this, or it's gonna keep bothering me, and the ghosts turn to demons, and then the only way to get it out is to perform an exorcism, which for me is sometimes writing a book and getting it all down and saying, all right, now it's out there, it's out of me, and I can be okay and think about something else. Because I'm not even fun to be around when I'm working on a book.
Oh, awesome.
It's awful, it's long hours, and you're like, oh, I gotta interview this person or whatever. It never ends.
Please tell me you're not that guy that uses that as the excuse. Don't worry about it. I'm just writing a book right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm an author.
It's true. It could be. Anyways, you've got a number of books on different topics, so it's just really the one that sticks with you.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah, I mean, lots of stuff interests me, and sometimes it just starts with a question, and you start thinking about it and going, well, what is the answer to that? And maybe other people would have that question too. And I find some of the best books answer just like one question. And because it's just so specific, and you never thought it was that complex until you start to go down the rabbit hole with the writer and the author, and you say, oh, wow, I want to know too now. Now I want to see where this journey ends. I hadn't considered that.
I saw on the book listing, Who's Haunting the White House is the revised edition. What caused the revision?
I had a hit. So what happens is the first one did really well, and it ran out of printing,
All
And
right.
so the publisher said, "Hey, we have a new president," and this was back when Obama became president. They said, "There's a new president. Can we update it and put it out again?" And I said, "Sure." I mean, there's always new stories coming out. So that was the revised edition. When you see a revised edition, usually means the first one did pretty well.
That's awesome. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, thanks.
I thought it was going to be, oh, we had more stories we added, or I got the chance to talk to you.
No,
It was a hit, and I made a load of money off.
it wasn't a load of money. It was enough. But the thing is, there were more stories. Here's the thing with the stories of the White House
Yeah.
is that it takes a solid 4+ years after a president gets out before you start hearing the stories from that president. So you're always 1 or 2 presidents behind.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just because, as soon as someone's right out of office, they're not going to be like, "I got to tell you how haunted this place was."
Yeah.
That's not going to be the first interview they give. And their kids, if their kids live there too, like that, those stories just start to trickle out over time. So part of it is just there is a layer of privacy and secrecy there that it takes a while for those little nuggets to sort of come out. But that's what it was about.
What's your favorite story from the White House?
Oh, so by far, the Lincoln's ghost comes up again and again, President Lincoln. And if you think about it, his presidency was the most challenging of all of them. I mean, there's not even a close second. His son died while he was in the White House. His nation's at war with itself. The Civil War is tearing the whole Union apart. And, of course, he paid the ultimate price. He was assassinated. And I think every president since has had an understanding that that's as bad as it has gotten so far, and hopefully ever will. And so I think we sort of keep him around. We summon him. And I spoke to one of the White House foremen. Had a story where he was talking about he was going upstairs to turn the lights on the second floor, which is that's where the president and first family live. And he said he turned the lights on, and there was Lincoln sitting outside the Lincoln bedroom, which actually used to be the executive office before the East and West wings were added on. That was the president's office. And he said he was sitting there with his legs crossed, looked right at him, and then just slowly disappeared.
Oof.
And you look at that and you go, okay, wait. I mean, I know you're not going to make a Hollywood horror movie out of that, but it's the White House, and that foreman is been drug tested, psych screened, evaluated 8 ways to Sunday.
Yeah.
Right? He works at the White House, so that is as reliable of a witness as we'll ever find. And we know what Lincoln looks like. I mean, you're like, you sure it was him? I don't know. Can you pull a $5 bill out? And yep. Oh yeah, that was the guy.
That's right. Well,
That's who I saw.
God, I didn't even think about that part. These are people who've gone through security checks.
Like you wouldn't believe security checks. Yeah, that's right. I mean, so if you work in the White House, you have clearance. I mean, they have checked out your everything around you, to verify that you're okay to be around the president, first family, and foreign heads of state.
Wow, I didn't even think about that part of it. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a great place. It's really a powerful historic place. It's worth seeing if you ever get the chance.
We got to go to the Capitol. We went there for a senior trip. We didn't go to the White House, but we got to go to the Capitol, and there is an energy in that town like I've never felt it. And I'm not saying I'm psychic by any means, but I mean, just the raw history, and age of that town, you feel it.
You do. And decisions especially the White House, decisions have been made inside those buildings, Capitol too, of course, that have changed borders, like affected millions, if not billions of lives, not just Americans, but around the world, caused death and destruction, right? Some of the decisions that were made there, many, many miles away.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And there is a sort of gravitas to the whole town that I think you do pick up on. And every day I wake up grateful that I'm not a politician.
Yeah, really right. Author Jeff Belanger on the line with me right now as we talk about the world of the weird and everything in between. It brings us to your latest book, The Fright Before Christmas, Surviving Krampus and Other Yuletide Monsters. Now, you say you get stuck on ideas. Where exactly did you get stuck on this idea?
I can tell you the moment this book was born. It was like 10 years ago, and I live in Massachusetts, and it was cold. Early one December when I was putting up the Christmas lights. Half the damn things didn't work from when I threw them in the box 11 months ago, when they did work. And I was putting the wreath on my front door. It was fake wreath, plastic, everything, and it had the little crafting wire that I was putting it on my door knocker. And the crafting wire was rusted, it broke, it fell to the ground, and I just screamed, humbug. Which isn't true at all. I screamed. It was definitely a different word, but I did yell a word. And just one of those ones you can't say on the radio. And I was just like, why on earth am I out here with my numb cold fingers putting up lights, putting up the wreath? Why December 25th? Why the evergreen? Why Santa Claus? Why do we spend so much money on this one day? Why? I'm a Halloween guy anyway. I'm a paranormal guy. What am I even doing with Christmas? And I went, there's got to be answers to those questions. And then I remember the Andy Williams song, there'll be
Yeah.
scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases
Yeah,
long,
yeah,
long
yeah.
ago. And I went, scary ghost stories? I didn't grow up with ghost stories at Christmas. What the heck's going on here? And I started this deep dive, and I went into I broke Christmas apart into all its original pieces and put it back together, and I went, oh my goodness. As a guy who likes creepy stuff, I used to think back in my younger, naive days that Halloween was the scary holiday. Oh, Halloween is the warm-up act. If you like creepy, it is the second creepiest holiday, and it is a distant second. I mean, it's a time when the veil's thin and ghosts are around, and I
Yeah.
get some people are afraid of ghosts, sure, but Christmas has monsters that will kill you, literally tear you from your bed, bring you up to a mountain lair, cut you up, and kill you if you're naughty. That is, I mean, we don't worry about our lives in danger at Halloween. But Christmas was born in absolute darkness. It was born from the winter solstice. It was born when it's the shortest day, it's the longest night. We're looking down the barrel of the gun that is winter, and we realize, like, oh my gosh, this is a dangerous season that we have to survive. And the only way we survive it is together, right? You can't get through this thing alone. And so all of these traditions were born of trying to survive winter. And the monsters were there to keep us safe, but to hunt us if we
Yeah.
ventured too far off course. And it's been a mishmash of so many different cultures and beliefs and countries. And today we call it Christmas and Santa and consumerism, but there's a really dark undertone to it that's been around a lot longer than even Christianity.
It's really, and like I was saying, there's not a ton of stuff on there about or out there about this, especially from, you'll have the random person like, okay, this is what Krampus is all about, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah. But I mean, you can really get into this stuff, and it is well, you want to talk about a melting pot of a lot of weird stuff going into one spot.
Yeah, for sure.
That's Christmas and the winter holiday.
That's right. So Krampus people know because he has movie deals.
Yes.
Right? He's making a roaring comeback because, and he never went away, by the way. I would suggest to you that in your childhood, Krampus was around. You just didn't recognize him. But he didn't go by that name. He was green, and he lived above Whoville, right? But if you don't think the Grinch is a derivative of Krampus, right? I mean, of course he is. He's got all the makings. But yeah, now today Krampus has movie deals, and he's doing Krampus runs and Krampus parades, and he's showing up in Christmas parades, all kinds of great stuff. But there's so many other monsters out there from all over, especially Northern Europe, because that was where winter was the toughest. So in Iceland, you've got the Grýla, who's a mountain troll who comes down to hunt children, and the Yule Cat, who's looking for new clothes, and Belschnickel from Germany, who he doesn't kill you, but he's just going to beat the naughty kids with a switch of sticks.
It's always, I will say this, with all the Christmas, monsters and villains that, with this stuff, it always seems like whatever they do, it's weird.
Yeah.
Like it's beat them with switches, or, hey, I'm coming down to steal clothes.
Right. Yeah, well, but there was in each culture there's a reason behind it. Like you used to hit kids with sticks. That's how it was, know. And so Belschnickel it translates to Nicholas in furs, and the idea is that each community might have one. Belschnickel, by the way, is starting to show up in pop culture too. So I don't know if you ever watched The Office. Dwight Schrute showed up as the Belschnickel in one of the episodes, which was great. And that was 10 years ago,
Yeah.
And so Dwight Schrute got to be Belschnickel in Christmas Chronicles 2 on Netflix with Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. The bad guy, the antagonist in the movie,
the little weird elf.
The kid that wears the dark coat and has the long black hair. He's called Belschnickel.
He is, isn't he?
He's called Belschnickel. So, this stuff's all coming back. It's coming
weird.
back because we're bringing it back, And I mean, now in that movie, he doesn't act like the traditional Belschnickel, but I love that they use the name.
Because I remember his part. I didn't remember the name, but then I remembered he turns back into an elf at the end, and it was strange how he was cuddling on Goldie Hawn. But That's probably a conversation for another time.
Right. Yeah, different show, I think. But no, this stuff is coming back because I think that the darker side of Christmas. And by the way, what you're supposed to think and feel about Christmas, if you think about it, was taught to you long ago in the guise of a ghost story, and one of the greatest ghost stories ever written. I mean, I'm talking about Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that story is so powerful because first of all, we realize like if Scrooge can change, if Scrooge can face down his past and his present and what his future will look like if he doesn't alter course, then we can change too. We can be redeemed. And I've always thought that, how can you see the light unless you're in a dark place? And Christmas provides that. It's literally dark. The days are really short. The nights
Yeah.
are long. It's cold. It's frightening. We're scared. And if you face down your own demons, the reason we give each other gifts is because we know we're going to have to help each other through the season. We exchange gifts. We bake each other breads and cookies and so on. We light our houses up with lights because we want to be beacons. We want to know that if something goes really wrong, that if your roof collapses under the snow, you can come to my house and I'll give you shelter. And if my roof collapses, I might need to go to your house and take shelter. And these traditions are they go back thousands of years before Christianity, and it was only over time that everything just got kind of mixed together. But those roots sort of come through, whether it's the evergreens or the mistletoe or the wreaths or candy canes or all of that stuff. You're talking about many different cultures and beliefs that came together to celebrate the winter solstice and to hunker down before this really frightening season settles in.
The Fright Before Christmas, Surviving Krampus, and Other Yuletide Monsters. Jeff, while you were writing this, was there one that was like your holy S one? Like, oh my God, I didn't know that, or didn't put it together? Was there one that stuck out to you?
Yeah, there's one. The Karakonkalis from Bulgaria is a really strange one. He's like a subterranean Bigfoot with glowing eyes, except he's never going to look like that because he's a shapeshifter. He can
Oh,
shift into any person or form or whatever. And he only comes out at night. He comes out during the unholy days, which is right around the winter solstice and Christmas. And if he gets out, he's going to jump on your back and claw at you until dawn when he has to go back underground. But being a shapeshifter, he can look like anyone. So he could look like a relative. And I was thinking, like, how we all have that Aunt Ethel that brings that horrible casserole at Christmas?
yeah.
Like, so when she's knocking at the door this year, like, it might be Ethel. Could we? Probably is. But, do you want to risk it? I mean, what if it's the Karakonkalis trying to get in? I mean, just be like, hey, Ethel, I don't know. You might be this monster from Bulgaria, so we're going to go ahead and let you stay out there tonight.
Oh, that's fun.
Play it safe.
Hey, Jeff, and there's a reason I'm asking this. Like, I'm Swedish and German.
Yeah.
Did any of these stick out to, like, whatever your nationality is?
Oh, of course, the Tomten from Sweden, which is a little helper elf around the house, which, if
Yeah.
you've ever heard of Elf on the Shelf, is completely ripped off of the Tomten.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
I mean, ripped off. I mean, inspired by, right? Just like Grinch was inspired by Krampus,
Yeah.
So yeah, every country has its own version. France has Père Fouettard, Father Whipper, who goes around and beats the naughty kids at the summoning of Saint Nicholas.
Father Whipper.
Father Whipper, Père Fouettard. Yeah, I mean, every country has some version of some monster that's there for the consequence. We got rid of all the consequences for bad behavior around this time of year. And that happened in the late 1920s. We started to get rid of all the consequences because Christmas became about consumerism and spending and buying presents and Santa Claus, and not about like the dark stuff. But I think that dark stuff is coming back because they're getting movie deals and they're showing up on Netflix and they're in this new book called The Fright Before Christmas.
The way you worked in the shameless plug was perfect.
Shameless.
I love it.
I know.
No, but do you think that goes to kind of just the survival rate? I mean, once you hit the 20s and lifespans start increasing, survival is maybe not as scary as it used to be with the winter months.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we've gotten soft. We have snowplow now, and if you're like, oh, it's so cold out, let's just DoorDash some pizza, right? Like you don't have to like. Yeah, we've gotten way softer. But if you just put your mind back, even like 100 years, just a century, it was a very different picture back then. And then 2 centuries? Oh, forget it. I mean, this was really a season to be reckoned with. You have to have enough food saved up.
Yeah.
You have to have enough supplies, enough fuel to burn to keep warm. All of that stuff is life or death. Every year, you're facing down a gauntlet, and that's where all of this stuff comes from. And I think maybe since we lost the consequences, the monsters have just sort of been lurking in the shadows, waiting. But I really think we're bringing them back because we need them. We need some sort of contrast to what this saccharine sweet thing that we've made it into. But the good news is, Christmas is allowed to be redefined every single year. If you want to make it totally religious and celebrate the birth of Jesus, have at it. You can. If you want to make it totally secular, you can do that too. It is completely allowed because that's how it started, and that's how it was for the first several thousand years.
It goes back to that melting pot.
Very secular holiday. Only until very recently did it become much more associated with one religion. But traditionally speaking, it's and the melting pot's there. The wreath, the tree, the evergreen, the garland, all of that pagan. And I think that's why there's been such a war against Christmas for so long, is because they knew, biblically speaking, it's not an important holiday.
Just let that float out. No, I'm kidding.
It just isn't. If the Bible wanted us to know the birthday of Jesus, it would have told us. But it didn't, because that's not – Christianity is defined by Easter, not by Christmas.
Well, they were talking about, like, if you go by his real birthday, because of like some of the frankincense and myrrh and some of the stuff that was brought to him, it sounds more like spring in that area.
That's probably correct. And the only clue we get in the Bible as to when Jesus was born is in Luke chapter 2, that says the shepherds were laying out with their flock by night, and the angel of the Lord appeared, and they were terrified. In Bethlehem, shepherds would stay out with their flock only in warm months, only in the spring, the summer, and into the fall. But once it started to get too cold, they stayed inside, which means the only time of year we can rule out, according to the Bible, is like late fall, winter, and earliest parts of spring. Doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't change any part of the story. But I'm just saying, it's not December 25th.
It's such a neat time of year.
It is for sure. And I think when I was a kid, man, Christmas was a drug, and I was high from like when the fork hit the plate on Thanksgiving dessert through like January 1st. When you're really young, you're just floating on Christmas energy. And you get older and you get a little crankier, and it gets harder to find that Christmas spirit. But the good news is you get to look for it every year, and you can try to rediscover it.
Jeff, as we do start to wrap up this week, like you're going to be on here weekly, if people want to find the Fright Before Christmas, your website probably the best place to go.
Sure, or wherever you get books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any local bookseller can get it. It's also an audiobook that I narrated myself. It's on Audible and everywhere else you get audiobooks, and it's an ebook. So if you do Nooks or any of the e-readers, it's also available there.
We'll put all those links at the bottom of the page. One last thing for you, Jeff. I know you got a lot going on. What's up next for you? What's kind of the rest of 2023 looking like in 2024?
So I'm on a story tour right now with the Fright Before Christmas, where I get to tell these stories in front of live audiences, and it's so much fun to just blow people's minds and share these monsters. So that is going to keep me pretty occupied all the way through the end of the year. And then January starts up, and Ghost Adventures starts filming again, so we'll be back working on that. And then my podcast, New England Legends, that's still going as well. So it's pretty much just like having 5 full-time jobs that never end.
Yeah, pretty much. I get it. All right, Jeff. Well, hey, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for the time, man. We'll put the links up and stuff. This was fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Good talking to you.